Hello, I'm Graham Elwood, and I'm here to tell you my Me Too story. I decided to tell this story because I think this happens to a lot of people, and in particular, men don't speak up. I think the Me Too movement has been a very important point in history. It's been very important for men to understand all of the stuff that women have to go through, from abuse to harassment, and it's a good conversation that America and the world has been having. I'd like to see the conversation expand. So that's why I'm telling this story. I'm not a men's rights activist, and I'm not trying to have some sort of competition over who's worse, men versus women. I just want to expand the awareness about abuse survivors and who abusers and the abused can be, and how they can be basically anybody. I also wrote this out, and it's in the link in the show notes below. I've posted it to Medium so you can read the entirety of it. I'm going to just talk here about the basic points. On February 20th, 2018, a judge granted me a 1-year restraining order against my ex-girlfriend, who had become violent and abusive, abusing drugs and alcohol, and is a gun owner. She was, and still is, working at one of the major comedy clubs in Los Angeles. To this day, they won't fire her. When I made the comedy club aware of her behavior, and when I went to court and got the restraining order on February 20th, I sent the general manager and a high-level executive at the parent company that owns the comedy club, two people I've known for years, the documents. They didn't fire her. On June 2nd, 2018, I was scheduled to perform at this comedy club, and that morning, late morning, I got a voicemail and a text from the general manager saying that because my ex was scheduled to work, I was not allowed to come into the club. I responded by saying that's not how a restraining order works. I'm scheduled to perform tonight. She needs to not come into work. So I was told not to come into the club. A friend of mine that's been with the Los Angeles Police Department for years told me to go to the Wilshire Police, Community Police Precinct or whatever, and fill out a police report because my ex was in violation of the restraining order by accepting a shift, thereby coming in within 100 yards of me. On June 4th, the executive at the parent company called me and told me I'm not allowed to come into that comedy club anymore, which was very puzzling to me. I was like, well, I have the restraining order against her. Why are you guys still hiring her? Why does she still have a job? She's a $11 an hour part-time employee. Well, Graham, that's not, the California labor laws, I was told. Okay, we have to protect our employees. I've been working for your clubs for over 20 years. I've helped you guys generate revenue. Just because I'm not I'm a private contractor, essentially, is what a stand-up comic is when they're hired by a club, but why are you protecting a domestic abuser? So at the behest of a major assault crimes detective with LAPD, who was assigned to the case when the violation occurred of the restraining order June 2nd, said go back to court to get the comedy club's address added to the restraining order. I did that on October 15th. My ex showed up with 2 employees from the comedy club and a lawyer from the parent company that was basically there kind of, I'm sure, protecting their own interests, but also kind of there on behalf of my ex, which was unbelievable. If I was a female comic and it was a male employee, and the female comic had the restraining order against the male employee, would this male employee still be allowed to work at this club? I don't think it's exclusively gender bias, because this club has kind of protected abusers in the past. There was a big name comic in Los Angeles that was banned from one of the other major clubs for sexually harassing waitresses. This happened several years ago. And the club that is protecting my ex let this guy come perform there, and I was told, well, he puts butts in seats. So I don't know if that's just their MO, is protecting abusers. And as my lawyer tried to explain to them, we had no other option but to go back to court October 15th. This is someone, we dated for 2.5 years, and in that time, she was a loving, sweet, a kind, gentle girlfriend. I would tell people, wow, this is like the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. And I don't drink. And so she rarely drank. I rarely saw her drink. I saw her have like 1 or 2 drinks a couple of times a month. I'm keenly aware of people who have alcohol and drug problems, so I was kind of looking for it when we first started dating. I never saw it. And then in July of 2017, after living together for a year and being together for 2.5 years, she started this new job where they would drink every day and everything. She then, one night, got really violent with me, and she said she feels like her life's out of control, and I said, go get help, and she didn't want to hear my help. I don't want to do that. And that conversation turned to her, well, you never this and you never that. I was like, what? This is the first time hearing of it. And then she finally got mad, and I said, she got up, and I said, all right, well, yeah, that's fine. What, are you just going to quit? And she went crazy and charged me and went, fuck yeah, I'm going to kill you. And I was just like, I've studied martial arts for years, and my styles, most of them are like, you're taught restraint and how to diffuse, violence. And she was like standing over me saying, fuck you, I'll kill you. And that night I slept in the bedroom with the door locked, and she slept on the couch, and I'm lying in bed like terrified, like, is she gonna shoot me? She grew up with guns. Does she have a gun in our apartment? Is she gonna kick the door in while I'm sleeping? Is she gonna attack me when I wake up in the morning? She's sleeping, by the kitchen. There's kitchen knives. I don't know. I was terrified. And I slept then the next 2 nights I slept at a friend's house, and I even talked to some guys about this, like what and I kind of was expecting guys to be like, get over it, everyone has bad fights, you're a man, you can handle it. And no, I heard a big dude, 6'4", 6'5", tell me he had a violent alcoholic wife, and he told me, she would hit me all the time, and I just took it. I thought I could handle it. I'm a big guy. He also had studied martial arts. He goes, Graham, until I woke up in the ER because she shoved me down a flight of stairs. He goes, hide the knives. Oh God, I didn't even thought. So I hid the knives, which, like, several days later, she went, what kind of psycho hides the knives? That like drove her nuts. Another friend of mine said he had to call the cops on his girlfriend, and they were like, the cops said to him, you should get a restraining order. And he goes, nah. And a big cop got in his face and said, I've seen guys bigger than you with kitchen knives in their stomach. So I didn't know what to do. And more guys started telling me stories. Oh, I was in the ER getting stitches, and when they asked in the ER why I was getting, this is another guy. These are all different men's stories. This guy said, oh, they were stitching me up, and when I said, oh, it was because my girlfriend, kicked me in the face, everyone in the ER laughed. Another guy said my girlfriend was banging my head against the wall and I just had to take it. Another guy said, yeah, she flipped out when I found out she was cheating on me and started hitting me, and there was nothing I could do. I just had to take it. And then another guy told me his story, and he said, call Peace Over Violence, which is a domestic violence place in Los Angeles that is the only one that I'm aware of in LA County that has stuff for men. And they told me that 20% of domestic violence is women against men, but men don't typically report it, so they think the number is actually a lot higher. And they told me that when women are the abusers, women will typically, if they're being abusive, will go to weapons, and the violence escalates quicker and becomes more lethal, which is terrifying to me. So I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I just wanted her out. I just thought, I got to move her out. And then I thought, well, it's not, I can handle it. Anytime I'd be into that, like, I'm a man, I can handle it. Look, I work out and all this stuff. I thought, well, if a female friend said that her boyfriend charged her with a fist and said, fuck you, I'll kill you, even though he didn't hit her, I'd say, get that guy out. Get out of there. That's not safe. And he grew up shooting guns? Ooh, get out of there. So one of the things she said when she came back, after I moved her out, she came back to pick up her stuff. She made fun of me for being abused as a kid. So about a year and a half or so ago, spring of 2017, I started to have repressed memories coming forward of being abused when I was 3 years old. And one of the things she said after a night of drinking was, oh, repressed memories aren't a thing. And when I first told her about it, she was amazing. She held me in her arms when I cried. It's like repressed grief is something I've never experienced before. It's like your whole body is crying, like every cell is just releasing this grief because it stays in your body on a cellular level. I've found out that through research that and this can happen to an adult, but especially as a child, when your brain isn't fully developed, when abuse happens or trauma, the brain literally seals it off and puts the memory aside because the child's brain is not developed enough to handle it. This can happen in adults too. It's just too much to deal with, so the brain just seals it off. And then something, comes forward. So when she mocked me, when she came back to pick up her stuff in August of 2017, after literally 2 months prior was holding me crying on numerous occasions, then made fun of me for being abused. It was like the worst kind of betrayal you could ever have. I was abused by this woman, Susan Jane Arnold, when I was 3 years old. Myself, my older brother, and 2 older sisters, my parents left us at Susan Jane Arnold's house while my parents went on a trip. And she physically and sexually abused me when I was 3. And these memories were dormant in my brain for over 4 decades. So then when my ex comes back here and says, oh, I was abused by a woman when I was a boy, literally like that, literally in those words. And all I did was say, I got in her face and I said, I'm sorry, and I left. And I didn't see her for 4 months. She wasn't working at the comedy club. And so when she reappeared at the comedy club in January of 18, when I saw her in January of 18, that's when I started the process of going to court and getting the restraining order that was granted on February 20th. And then I saw her, and then I didn't see her again until the October court date. I was like shaking, man. Because that's what trauma is. And her threatening to kill me and betraying me is absolutely tied to what happened to me as a kid. And why this comedy club is so sticking their feet in the ground to support this is unbelievable to me. And I want to show you this statistic that I was not aware of. So 1 in 6 men are victims of unwanted sexual contact by the time they're 18. 40% of their abusers are women. When I read this, I was blown away. I did not know this statistic. I was aware of 1 in 4 women being victims of sexual assault. I didn't know this. When I first had inklings of being abused, I thought, oh, it must have been a man. I just assumed it was a man. Again, I'm not bringing this up to sort of start some holy gender war and show who I'm saying, because I realized going through this experience and the reactions I heard from people, you know, and even having to get the restraining order of just like, well, you're a man, you can deal with it, and why would I come forward? What's the point? Some people are like, if anyone thinks I'm doing this to try to boost my career, this could very well hurt work for me. But when you're a survivor of childhood trauma, or even you lose your voice, your no is taken away from you, and so you gotta get your voice back. And I think a lot of survivors don't like coming forward. I think that's even worse for men. I think men don't talk about it. You know, oh, if I say this, oh, am I a pussy? What am I, gay? You know? And I've had relatives, oh, get over it. Bad things happen to people, just move on. I had a relative, what, are you losing your mind? Are you gay? Deal with it, move on. Another relative, oh, I heard about the Susan Jane thing. So, I'm telling this because I want survivors, especially men who don't feel like they should come forward, to come forward. Again, I'm not a men's rights activist. I'm not having a competition over who's worse. I want to expand the conversation. I want people to understand that abuse survivors can be anybody. Any gender, any sexual orientation, any ethnicity, socioeconomic background, it doesn't matter. One of the things I talk about on this show is let's get out of the identity politics. Let's stop thinking that this party or that party. It's just saying this gender is all bad and this gender is all good is just as ridiculous as saying all white people are good and all black people are bad, or vice versa. We need to talk about abuse. Abusers are people in positions of power and or authority that take advantage of somebody that's vulnerable. They can be a politician, a teacher, a coach, a parent, an older sibling, a babysitter, anything. In this process, I've had some memories that I've always had, and I've started to see them. There was even some relatives that have done some inappropriate stuff with me growing up. And it makes it hard. Because it's like I've been in a ball crying. I've been like, have my bike gear on, about ready to leave my apartment, and I can't leave because I'm afraid to leave my apartment. And I'm like, I'm not some professional fighter, but like, I have a black belt, I can handle myself, and I'm afraid to leave my apartment. I felt uncomfortable when like a female yoga teacher touches me in class. And I said to one, she said, "Do you mind if I touch you?" And I said, "This is like last year or something." And I said, "Actually, yes, I do." And she kept going. I said, "No, I'm uncomfortable." And she stopped and went, "Okay, no big deal." And I came home that day and realized that's the first time I've ever told a woman she can't touch me. Because men, we're not allowed to express that we're vulnerable or scared. And we're never allowed to say we don't like sex. We're never allowed to say that. I've even heard for men that have been abused by women, you were lucky, high five. I know guys that were like teenagers and adult women had sex with them and they're really confused by it. It messed me up for years, a guy told me, when he was 15 and a woman in her 30s took him somewhere. He goes, it messed me up. So, if there's anyone out there that's struggling with this, any survivor, please get help. Especially the men, because men don't talk about it. Male survivors are more likely to kill themselves statistically. There's higher rates. Anyone who's a survivor has thought about killing themselves, no two ways about it. And I know all these people. I know women who've been abused by women who've been abused by men. I know all these different people, and it's always the same thing. And a person in a position of authority abuse somebody, and their reactions are very similar. There's some specific things with, like if you're a man abused by a woman, it might be a little different than if you're a man abused by a man. But overall, it's fucking, there's no like rating system. Like, well, you get 10 points if you were a woman abused by a man, and 8. I'm not saying there's anyone's abuse sucks. Whoever is watching this, if you've been abused, it fucking sucks, and I'm sorry you went through that. I'm just talking about the specifics because I'm a man, and we're told, women are told don't be angry, always be nice. So women have like repressed anger, and men have like repressed sadness because we're not allowed to cry, we're not allowed to say no. And hey, man, if you're 14, and like I know of a guy that was 11 and a 19-year-old woman had sex with him, and he's like, haha, started early, and it's like, no, dude, you were raped. So I'm telling this story because I want people to know about it. I want to expand the discussion. My ex and everybody at the comedy club, my sincere hope is that they and anyone that's struggling with drug and alcohol abuse gets help, because if you don't get help, the other options are pretty grim. And I hope the parent company that owns this club reevaluates their positions on abuse. If one person watching this gets help, then this will all be worth it. I'm sure I'm gonna have to take some shit from people, but I just I can't not. I have to shine light on the dark, man. I gotta talk about this. I can't let it. It is eating me up to not talk about it. Get help. And I have a therapist, I have support groups, I have amazing friends, I have such an amazing safety net and support system in place that is imperative. The most courageous thing you can do is ask for help. And I know we're men, don't just suck it up, to tough it out, just deal with it, don't worry about it. Ask for help. It is the most courageous thing you can do. Because I've thought about taking my own life numerous times. And I'm so lucky that I have this long list of people I can call whenever I'm feeling that way. So if you or someone you know is struggling with this, here's some resources. These links, I'll put them in the show notes. 1in6.org, that's a site for male survivors. Al-Anon is a good resource. Peace Over Violence, and these two books, Victims No Longer by Mike Liu. This is a book for male survivors. It's very helpful. And then The Tao of Fully Feeling. This is anyone that's ever dealt with trauma. This book is also helpful if you're a partner of a man that's of a survivor. There's stuff and resources for partners, because I know some of you might be like, oh my God, you know, my boyfriend or husband is just these memories and I don't know what to do. So, and if you are dealing with this, it's very gentle. Be gentle with yourself. The most courageous thing you can do is ask for help and just know you're not alone. Thank you for watching.